Hello, everyone. My name is Katrina. I am a career advisor at Career Services, and today I'm here with Kyla Kinzle. She is a 2L at Pepperdine, and she's going to share some of her experiences. So first, Kyla, if you could just give us a high-level overview of your key experiences in undergrad and then the program that you're in now.
I went to Point Loma. I was a political science major. Some of the things I was most involved in, I worked at the CJR for my whole time at Point Loma as a student staffer. I did some research with them on anti-human trafficking education. I also worked with Loma After Dark. I did some campus ministry, some of the homeless ministries. I think that's all I did.
Yeah,
Um,
did you do some external internships as well?
Oh, yes, I did some external internships. I worked with the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. And that was actually kind of what made me want to go to law school. So important one to remember. Yeah, and now I'm, like Katrina said, I'm a 2L. That means it's my second year at Pepperdine. I am on a couple boards of some organizations, the Christian Legal Society, Women's Legal Association, and Environmental Law Society. I do all of their social media. Um, Kind of nice to blend some creativity with some of the legal stuff that we're doing. And then I'm also working in-house at two different companies. They're both based in Colorado. And they do a lot of like building and development. So I'm working with them doing some like contracts and insurance, HR type stuff. So it's been really fun.
Great. Thanks for that background. And then what's the specific title of the program that you're in?
Um, I don't know. Well,
Okay.
Juris
Okay, so
Doc.
it's not
No.
like a specific.
Yeah, so with
Okay.
law school, I do think this is something some people, maybe some law schools do it different, but everyone's kind of in the same program. And then the way you specialize is just by picking different classes your second and third year. And then also like what internships you pick. So over the summer, I worked at the Legal Aid Society again. So for example, if you were to do that and then take classes that are really specific to legal aid, that's kind of how you would specialize in that. But there's not really a degree difference, or like a major or something like that, at least at Pepperdine and most of the law schools I know, you're just kind of in the program and then you're taking specific classes. You can also get certificates. I think, for example, like Pepperdine has the Palmer certificate, which is for entrepreneurship in the law. So it's like a business law focus. They also have one for entertainment and sports law, and a couple others. So that's kind of how you can specialize, but there's not really a difference in the program.
Okay, great. And then last thing for the introductions, could you talk just a little bit about the scholarship that you have?
Yes, so I'm a faculty scholar. That means that I had a kind of a separate application that I filled out when I was applying to law school. And Pepperdine is a Christian school, similar to Point Loma. They're Church of Christ, not Nazarene, but they have this scholarship where you can write about kind of your faith and how you would fit in at Pepperdine, and about your background, what you want to do. And then it is a full ride scholarship with a stipend. The stipend covers like textbooks and stuff like that. It's not like a full housing or something like that. So I still have some student loans, but for the most part, everything's covered. So it's really, really lovely and great. And we get to do some kind of like ongoing stuff as our like faculty scholars cohort. And most of that is welcoming the new students who have the scholarship in the spring and then in the fall when they actually arrive. So
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, it's helpful, I think, for students to know that they can look for those external or like maybe specific funding opportunities for law school as well.
yeah, and it is one that you do have to apply to separately from the just like regular JD application, which is a good point to look out for those because a lot of schools do have additional scholarships that you're not just automatically considered for. They do have a lot that you're automatically considered for, but yeah, look out for those sneaky little applications. They can be really, really helpful.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the first question is what has been the hardest part of transitioning from Point Loma to law school?
Yeah. Um, there's a lot, I think, that's difficult. Um, I think the biggest thing I can think of is it's just a really different way of doing school. Um, undergrad is, I think, somewhat similar to how you experience school, maybe in high school, and that transition can be hard, but you're thinking about things in a similar way. Assignments are pretty similar, the grading structure is pretty similar, and then you switch to law school and it's pretty different. Um, we have a curve, so not just like whoever, gets the highest score, that's 100%. That's kind of what an undergrad curve looks like, but this is what like a law school curve is. They have to give out a certain percentage of each grade. So they give out a percentage of A's, percentage of B's, percentage of C's, etc. So that changes the dynamics a little bit. You're also only really graded on your final. Um, there will be one class where you have some other assignments, but for the most part, all of your grades are just the final, which is a really different way to study, I think, than undergrad, where there was a lot of essays or assignments, projects, things over the course of a semester that you're working on to get your grade. Um, in law school, it's really just that final exam is what you're working for most of your classes. So that was a really big difference. And you're just expected to think differently about how you approach a topic. They're really stretching you to think like a lawyer is what they always say, which is super helpful, but it's definitely a different way of approaching school. So I think that was a hard transition initially, especially when you feel like you're really good at school and then you're going to this new environment where you have to kind of relearn how to do school and everyone's telling you how you should study and how you should do this, and and it can get really noisy. I think a lot of opinions, and can be a little bit hard to find your I don't know, find your center, find your stride when you're trying to do school in a different way. So I think that was one of the hardest things.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. Kind of the flip side of that, what experiences or parts of undergrad, and this can be through Point Loma or outside of Point Loma, or maybe one of each, you feel like best prepared you?
Yeah. I think there's kind of two ways I want to go with that. There's like the emotional social aspect and then like the technical. So first for like emotional social, I think Point Loma was great at preparing me for having passion and really caring about the world and what I want to do in the world. And I think that's been something that's really gotten me through the really hard parts of law school, is just holding on to um, yeah, this just the perspective of seeing the world and the problems in the world, but seeing ways that we can address them and work for solutions. And I think both in the political science department and the CJR and my time at the Legal Aid Society, which was outside, I think I developed a lot of um, really good deep passion for the world, for life, for yeah, for working for something. And I think that's really important to have. So I think that prepared me well. Technically, like if you're thinking about skills you want for just doing well in law school, just like focus specifically on the grades. Um, I took a couple legal focused classes, and I think that was helpful in just dipping my toes in the water a little bit into um what law school is even going to be kind of about. Um, and I think I got a lot of good writing skills. I did some research, like I said, for the CJR, and I think that was really helpful getting feedback from professors and researchers who are doing kind of that like higher level writing. Writing's really important in law school. So
And that
um,
was recently published, right?
yes, yeah. That article, yeah, was published in the Journal of Human Trafficking, which was really cool to get to have my name on ResearchGate. It feels very like special.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. And I also think Legal Aid Society was super helpful because you're kind of seeing the real side of what legal work looks like. So any legal internship, there's a ton that you can get while in undergrad or during a gap year. I know a lot of my friends in law school did some kind of like legal secretary or internship as a gap year. And that's super helpful just to kind of understand what it looks like on the real world side. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
The next question is, what has been the biggest surprise of law school? I know you already talked about like the grades, but if there's anything else you feel like comes to mind as like a surprise?
Yeah, I think it was more of a personal thing. I think it was really surprising to see how much the environment of law school brought out some things that I just had been struggling with. So like school wise, having to switch the way that I do school a little bit. Um, it was a little surprising to be like, oh, okay, that's something I definitely need to work on, like being more structured or having to think in a different way, like I kind of said before. Um, yeah, and I think it goes by really, really fast. Now that I'm a 2L, I think that's something I would say is kind of surprising is when you're starting and you're kind of in the middle of it, it feels like this is going to be forever. And then suddenly you're like almost done with, your first semester of your second year, which is where I am right now, and um it's going by very, very quickly. So I think that was surprising. Learned a lot about myself in the last year and a half or so. And I think there's just like there's lots of goodness to be found in. I think a lot of people stress how scary law school is, which is true. I don't want to say it. Like it is kind of scary. And it is hard, but there's also like lots of fun and camaraderie, and especially at Pepperdine, I know I've heard from other people that some schools can feel really competitive or I don't know, like not great culture wise, but Pepperdine's been pretty great in just having lots of really cool people and getting to pick their brains and see them every day because you're put in these sections where you see the same people for a whole year. You have every class with them, more or less. There's one class that you don't, but um, it was really cool to just like, I don't know. Yeah, have that. That was a surprise, meeting everyone and it being really, really great in that way.
That's good. I'm glad. Yeah. And that brings up a good point. Like, when you're looking at law school programs, like, you are totally allowed to reach out to people, especially people that are in the program, maybe like a 1L or a 2L, and ask them, like, what is the culture like? And, like, how have you been supported? How does your program support students that are struggling and transitioning in this life stage? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would totally recommend doing that, especially if they're not the people who are giving you the tours or something like that, because they're kind of told what to say. But if you are at a law school tour or something and you just like sneak off at the end and go ask some students, everyone's gonna want to talk to you because it's really fun to get to tell prospective students like kind of what we're doing because it is a really unique thing. Um, so yeah, go find some people and ask them questions.
Awesome. Next question. What advice do you have to students who are applying this year, or maybe like your biggest tips for the application process? Because I know people receive a lot of feedback on that, and there's like a lot of application materials. But if you think like big picture, what's your biggest tip for that process?
Yeah. I would say start early. The more time you have to work on your application, I think the better. So if you kind of have a general idea of when you want to go into law school, I would say don't rush the application. Don't save it all for the end. Um, really work on your personal statement. I think that does a lot. Um, especially if you have kind of the grades that you want to have and you have the LSAT score and everything, what's going to set you apart is your personal statement. So, um, I would spend some time in conversation with your friends and family and just like really talk to them, talk through like what you want to do, how you want to kind of communicate your passion and your story to the school, and get a lot of feedback on that. My draft went through many a hand. So that was really, really helpful in just like having other people's feedback on that. And then what everyone says, LSAT, LSAT, LSAT. It's a little annoying. I mean, all standardized tests can feel like they're, not quite a great indicator of your actual success in school, but it is really important and schools really do look at it. So, and I do think it translates pretty well compared to any other standardized test I've taken to actually the skills that you do need in law school. Um, yeah, so I would say spend some good time studying on that. Don't rush it. Take it a couple times, take a lot of practice tests. That is one of the biggest things that I did that I think really changed my score is just like drilling practice tests so you really get that like the speed and that's a big part of it is timing. And that is a really, really true thing on law school exams is it's timing is a huge part of testing in law school. So that's really important. And the LSAT trainer by Mike Kim is amazing. Um, I took the LSAT twice. The first time, um, I liked my score, but it wasn't like exactly what I wanted. And then I did the LSAT trainer for maybe a month or two in between the time that I took the first one and the second one. I think I took them like one at the beginning of summer, one at the end. Um, and my score went up like 5 or 6 points. So it was really, really helpful for me. I liked understanding kind of the background behind why the LSAT is asking certain questions. So those are all my thoughts on applying, but also just, take a breath, take your time, I think is a big thing. I kind of rushed into it and it really worked out for me, but I really don't think there's a downside to taking your time and really being thoughtful in how you apply and what goes into your application. And yeah, you're gonna do great. So,
And do you guys need like letters of reference for that as well?
yeah, yeah. So, I got mine from a couple professors that I felt like I really spent a lot of time with, and then the director of the CJR and someone I worked with at Legal Aid Society. So, having kind of a diverse range of letters of rec I think is helpful because I mean not all schools will accept that many, so definitely look at that. But yeah, having people who have seen you in kind of different areas academically in kind of a work environment, maybe in a legal environment is really helpful.
Great. Yeah. And I think sometimes when we think about like the actual application deadline date, it's like, oh, that's when I need to get things done. But I think if you're reaching out to letters of recommendation, it's also really, really strategic and helpful to get your materials to them and have like a draft that you feel confident in. Typically, we want to reach out to letters of recommendation like a month in advance. So if you think about like the deadline for the law school application, maybe mentally thinking about a month before then, you want to have a draft so that you can reach out to some of these letters of recommendation so that they can, because you can kind of craft your materials, right? And have your letter of recommendation maybe fill in some gaps or provide like narrative background for some of the things you're already mentioning in your
Yeah.
statement.
And I would even add that for a law school application specifically, you want to be way earlier than you think. Especially if you're wanting to be kind of competitive, or you're applying to a school that doesn't accept as many students. If you're not and you just want to go to law school and you don't really like, there's not really that like pressure of trying to get into like a top 14 or something like that. Then I think you can apply a little later, but usually they say before even Thanksgiving, you want to have your applications in, because law school, I mean, they're not due until usually like January. Um, but law schools do kind of a rolling admissions sometimes, and I think it's helpful to get it in early. So think earlier, and yeah, I think I reached out to people who I wanted letters of rec from, I think in summer maybe. Um, and I had kind of already talked to them in person about it before that. So, um, yeah, early is better for law school stuff. Yeah.
That's a great tip. Okay, so last question, kind of like parting wisdom, ending on a positive note. What has been your favorite part of law school so far?
Yeah, I think just the people. There's so many brilliant people in my little like year. And honestly, the years above us and even below us. So it's been really cool to get to hear from them, their thoughts on all these complex things. Law is very complex and it's very kind of I don't know. It depends is like a thing that everyone always says because it really does. Like there's so many different ways to take things. So it's really cool to have seen and learned from and learned with some really, really cool, smart, awesome people. And it's been really fun to get to be friends with them too. So, and the professors are super, super smart and approachable and really interesting. So, yeah,
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and experiences.
of course.